apologies for the delay in today's meeting starting. We had some technical issues. I'm glad they've all been ironed out now. So we're here today for our scrutiny meeting, and I'll just crack on straight away with the agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence.
Yes, good evening again, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillors Nicklin, DJ Reynolds and Santu, with substitutes from Councillor Moat, Councillor Swinard and Councillor Oswald. We also have an apology from Councillor Oguntopi. I've not got a sub, and an apology from Councillor Butterfield with the substitute Councillor Barham. I'm not sure if Councillor Barham's managed to rejoin the meeting. I can't see her. Can you confirm, Paul, as host, please? Hello?
I can't see her in either the waiting room or the main room.
Sorry, Jeremy, did you say something? Jeremy, you had.
And we have the leader of the council, of course, Councillor Jeremy Kite, with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. I'm not a member of the committee, but I'm here to try and help answer any questions on the housing issue. I'm afraid I do have to leave at 6:30 though, so I'm sorry for that. Obviously, I anticipated this meeting being over by then, but apologies if I have to leave.
No worries. Okay, so we'll go on to declarations of interest. Anyone got any declarations of interest? No. Okay, moving on. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of July. Is everyone happy with the minutes? Yeah.
Read.
Okay, lovely. Item 4 is urgent items.
I'll have to give you a call back in a minute. I'm still working, I'm afraid. I'm on a conference call.
Right, okay. Moving on from that, any urgent items? There isn't any urgent items from me as chair. So we can go on to item number 5, which is to consider references from other committees, and there are no references from other committees for the members to consider this time round. So that brings us on to agenda item number 6, which is the Chairman's update. So I just wanted to say again, thank you for everyone coming. Thank you for your patience for today. I just want to mention that we're still at a reduced ratio for the committee groups at the moment. Hopefully that will be changing at the next GAC meeting, where we hope to agree full membership again. And that's all I have to say for that. Moving on to item number 7, Regulation 9 notice. Any comments at all? Anything to consider, any issues, anyone? No? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 8, which is what I drew down. The report, I take everyone's read already, so we'll take it as the report's been read. Is there anything you'd like to comment for any questions?
And anybody who wishes to speak, please raise their hands and I will take the people in order.
Thank you, Chairman. Not really. I think the report hopefully speaks for itself in terms of what is a very positive initiative. But what I did kind of want to add, probably that isn't in the report, is that it's almost a sledgehammer to crack a walnut in a lot of ways, sweat, depending on your view as a council and how you deal with rough sleeping approaches, because effectively this is what this deal with. Our approach is, and always has been, it doesn't matter what time of the year it is really. If you get an emergency out of hours call or a rough sleeper, our default setting is that we will place and find emergency accommodation while we're then trying to sort the problem, the next day and onwards, if you like. I think this was an initiative that was probably needed at some point when councils may have had a different approach to dealing with rough sleepers, but I'm pleased to say that this council has never done that, and it kind of is a testament to the low numbers that we consistently deal with, because we're able to deal with rough sleepers in a humane way, if you like, rather than making them jump through lots of hoops for accommodation. Not all these rough sleepers are eligible. but those are treated with dignity and respect while we try to, you know, resolve the situation long term.
Peter, can you, as a public meeting, can we during this meeting hear how you identify them, what resources go out, when they go out, so that the public are aware of the fact what we're actually doing? Thank you.
Yes, I certainly can, Councillor. In terms of the actual how it physically works, is that it's effectively an out-of-hour service, because obviously during the day we've got staff here that will connect when they are approached by a homeless person in need of emergency accommodation. We have a emergency duty officer that's on available 24 hours, that's able to make a referral based on calls that come in through the out-of-hours call centre. And it's a widely publicised number. All the support agencies, you know, people like Porchlight or even the Dartford Winter Shelter will have details of how they can contact us if they can't help. And also there is a press release when SWEP is activated on those 3 consecutive cold nights that alerts the press, and if they pick that up, and obviously it's another way of advertising the fact that the service is there. But basically, it's a call in to us, and an officer will pick it up, find accommodation, and then we'll facilitate that move.
So that is reactive. Do we have any proactive ways of identifying these people?
Yeah, and I think in terms of the service we pay with Porchlight, they have an outreach service that is 24 hours. Often, you know, officers may see something in a town centre themselves and go out if it's during the workday. So we try to be as proactive as we can. But often this cohort of clients is often entrenched, and it normally is a real crisis before they actually approach the services. So sometimes finding them is more difficult than you might imagine. I mean, pre the latest arrangements for assessing what your need is locally, we used to, 2 nights a year in the winter, we used to go out and physically look for people. And on most occasions, you couldn't find anybody. We knew they were there, we just couldn't find them. So it's kind of always going to be, I think, a little bit reactive because we're reliant on people contacting us, but we try to be as proactive as we possibly can by the means I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think it's important to indicate in this public meeting that when it's like that, we do go out, we do go looking for them. Of course, if you can't find them, you can't find them. I mean, at the moment, I believe there are some in Jordan's Wood. We've been out looking for them, but we can't find them. We can find what they left behind when they're there.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? David Moat, Councillor Moat, please, followed by Councillor Kite.
Thank you, Peter. Can you just remind us how our services actually interrelate with the initiative on winter shelter from the Dartford churches? Because I know the council is particularly active in supporting that particular initiative. But I just wondered if people are really aware of just how much the council is doing to support that activity during the winter.
Yeah, I mean, we work very closely with the shelter. It started probably 4 or 5 years ago when the centre really started picking up, you know, increased volumes, and the council decided to support that financially. They opened them, you know, for 6 months of the year, but obviously that's not going to happen this year. So based on that really good working relationship in terms of the, you know, the support that we've provided as a council to a group of volunteers that do a fantastic piece of work, if I'm honest, on a personal level, is to move forward this year, come up with another arrangement, and the report kind of details how we're trying to do that. So that will be support in terms of finding accommodation, financially, supporting the support element financially as well. We're hoping that the government bid will be successful, and we can, you know, contribute that way. But we also are committed that if that isn't successful, then we'll certainly pay for the support element that the church is going to provide to anyone that we place during that time. I think it's going to be interesting this winter because we have picked up quite a lot of rough sleepers as part of the Everybody In agenda following the COVID lockdown. So I'm anticipating that a lot of those rough sleepers are actually in the system already. So it'd be interesting to see what kind of numbers we get in the winter. But we are absolutely committed to supporting the winter shelter. As I say, they do such a fantastic job.
Thank you, Peter.
The leader, Councillor Kite, please.
Thank you, Chairman and Deputy Chairman. The debate about proactive versus reactive is really at the heart of this and at the heart of scrutiny of this area over a number of years. I think one thing I need to say and make clear from the political leadership point of view is that the work on winter doesn't start in the winter. This is a year-round commitment by our housing team to look at the souls who are in trouble in a homeless crisis or housing crisis, and to work with them throughout the year in a way which is really blind to the season. But when the season hits, and obviously the cold weather is particularly bad, the SWEP is actually a little bit of a misleading, well, not misleading, but it doesn't really apply to Dartford as much because we do so much work anyway. I can imagine that the SWEP would underpin some councils that were very overstretched and pretty much in crisis themselves. It would be a kind of statutory way of saying, well, you have to do this. But in Dartford, I think it's important to make the point that we are pretty much doing this work the year round anyway. And there have been occasions, I think Peter will tell me if I'm right or wrong, there have been occasions when we have triggered our own SWEP before the official SWEP. We don't necessarily wait for the official 3-day SWEP to happen. We're already working through that period. What can happen if you have, if we are pressed at the same time, if there's a sudden upswing in homeless folk or people street sleeping folk, and then the SWEP is triggered, what that can mean is that we do, it's not necessarily a good solution for the rough sleepers, because the SWEP basically says, well, do whatever you need to do to get people indoors, and that isn't necessarily always a great solution for them. So we're trying to avoid being responsive to SWEP. I think we want to be proactive to people who are rough sleeping, and that's guided all of our policy. With regard to the homeless shelter, the winter shelter, it's been a fantastic project. It ran for a year without our support, simply working through the churches. We obviously saw it, and we began to hit our radar. We got involved very quickly, and we, well, not to put too fine a point on it, we basically pay for all of the housing costs now. We pay for all of the accommodation costs, and we've done that for a number of years. And I think the amount now is something in the region of 12,000 a year we pay in the form of a grant to the shelter. Clearly, this year is going to be different, and I think I know Tony in the housing department and Peter have already made big contacts with the shelter. I have too, with Michael, who's the chief volunteer there. Spoke to him only in the last few days, and we are looking at making sure that we're able to provide the equivalent of the shelter this year, obviously that's COVID secure. It's not appropriate to have rough sleeping folk moving from site to site every night, as the old shelter did. That's clearly not right. We need to make sure the place that they are in is completely COVID secure. So that's our number one priority. But I'll close with that. But the chief issue, Chairman, is to always remember that our winter work isn't triggered by winter. It actually begins much earlier in the year and pretty much is all year round. We are preparing to keep people off the streets as much as possible. And I think actually we've been very successful in that. And the SWEP, when it comes in, is almost, as I say, almost applies to other councils more than us, because I think there are some councils that have got a lot of stretched resources themselves, and perhaps the SWEP is the trigger for them to take some emergency action. But we would rather deal with this as a non-emergency way and actually deal with people in advance to make sure that they are safe, secure, and in a warm place. And the final point I'll make is that the key to our funding with the winter shelter is not just to provide a bed and a roof. It's actually to provide the guidance and support to solve their problems as much as possible. There's no point in us just intervening with money to resolve a single night's issue. We have to move in. So the funding that we put into the winter shelter has released their own fundraising to pay for a number of years now a support worker who provides invaluable advice, working with our own home housing team to actually ensure that these people aren't just looked after for a cold night. They are actually set on a path towards a housing solution, and that's absolutely crucial for us. I'll leave it there, Chairman.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you. It's just a very quick question, really. I'm just going to ask, as in previous years, will councillors be distributed a list of all of the contact details? Because I have had call to use that on, of all times, Christmas Eve. So it was extremely useful in the past. If I could ask that that comes out again, please.
Perhaps we should have it now, given that there could be people out at the moment, as I have found.
Councillor, can I just clarify, is that the list of all the contractors, officers, that kind of stuff? Is that what you're talking about?
I think it was the out of hours contacts as well. And certainly I've had to pass those on over Christmas Eve. So, you know, it was just a one sheet sort of type document, 1 page document.
Yeah, no problem. I'll get that to you. No problem.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Yeah. Councillor Swimmer, did you actually ask to speak, or were you just scratching your head?
Oh, scratching my head.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Oliver scratching his head as well.
Well, actually, I have a couple of questions, if that's okay. So, I think it's really good how Dartford Borough Council deals with the SWEP protocol, and the fact that they go above and beyond what is actually required is to Dartford Council's merit. And it's good that you're not looking at it just at winter time. It's being looked at all year round, which kind of brings me to what I was thinking about as well, is from this, you know, it says SWEP is a severe weather, and we tend to sort of look at it from how cold it is, temperature kind of view. But I'm thinking, looking at recent years, severe weather's also becoming heat as well. It's becoming really hot at times. We've experienced that over this summer. There's also been torrential rains at times as well, and winds. And I'm wondering if there's anything around, perhaps being able to use the protocol to not just look at when the temperature drops to a certain degree, but perhaps when it goes up to a certain degree as well, or when there is torrential rains incoming, and we know about it. Would that be something, perhaps, maybe this is for Councillor Clightly to answer rather than housing, but is this something that we could perhaps look at in the future, trying to incorporate in the thinking of SWEP?
I'm happy to take it, but Councillor, if the leader wants to pick it up.
Well, to be fair, although the protocols do relate to minus temperatures, I suspect that the core work of the SWEP, it would actually relate to other severe weather conditions. And it's worth making the point that the government can and does vary its application of the SWEP. I remember a couple of years ago, the government stepped in, and I think it gave us warning that although there was only one night plan of very severe weather, it was so severe that they wanted us to implement SWEP. I think that's right, Peter, isn't it? Give us a nod. We don't necessarily. The government will always centrally make decisions like that. And if there were to be some other tumultuous weather event, severe rain in some areas, or very, very hot in some areas, my only thinking is that the SWEP is a national protocol. And I think it's much more likely that what would happen is that the government would intervene at local level or regional level based upon the most severe conditions. I can't think of a tumultuous rain that would be a threat to life and limb that was national, much more likely to be regional and flooding. The same with outbreaks of very, very hot weather. For hot weather to be injurious to someone's health, I think it's unlikely it would ever be a national condition. If it is, we're all in serious trouble. But I think it's much more likely to be in a local outbreak. And in those circumstances, there are emergency provisions inside MCHLG to actually intervene in regions and to make decisions. But I understand it's a sensible point. I'm not suggesting it isn't a sensible point, but I do think we have to preserve the reputation of our housing work. And I think if we were to be intervening in hot weather. It's very difficult to know. Hot weather is much more, it would need to be much higher, it seems to me. I'm not an expert on meteorologist. I'll leave that to Piers Corbyn to deal with that. But my understanding is that for hot weather to be injurious to health, it would need to be absolutely extreme, more than we ever see. Otherwise, there are always alternatives to dealing with it. So I think, to be honest, it's unlikely that SWEP would ever move, but to cover those issues formally in terms of protocol. But I can reassure you, Councillor Gosine, that the government absolutely would vary it in the case of a severe weather incident somewhere, either regionally or nationally.
So just to clarify then, you did say before that you would, on your own volition, the council would do things as well, rather than when it is actually actioned by central government. So you're on one side, it sounds to me that you would act on your own volition, but then when I've just asked about that, you're saying you're going to act, you're going to wait for a direction from central government. And I take a note about
no, that's not.
No.
Yeah, okay. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there is something very obvious about a clear and present threat to someone's health from a very severe cold weather. Very, very clear and present threat to health. I think we can deal with that, and therefore our work is to not wait for SWEP. During the winter, we know that winters are going to be colder than summers, so we're actually able to do an awful lot of work in advance to prepare for that, and we try to be ahead of the game. What I'm saying is I can't, in all honesty, think of a severe weather incident at the other end of the scale which would give you the lead-in and predictability, which would mean we would need to operate on our own volition. If there were to be a severe heat event involving people, my guess is A, it would be regional, and B, it would be quite unpredictable. It would emerge almost from nothing. Within the course of a week or so, we'd suddenly be facing very, very hot weather. The answer is we will always act on our own volition if, by looking out the window and the experience of our people and the information we're getting from the souls who are rough sleeping, which is fortunately very, very small actually, but we will always act on that information, and if there's something we can do to help them, we'll do it. The point I'm making about our interventions earlier is that we know that winter is going to be colder, so we tend to work in that kind of proactive way there, whereas a heat event or a flooding event, I suspect would be more proactive because it would happen very quickly, and it would certainly be on the government's radar too.
Okay, so basically, I understand then. So if it was to happen on a off-the-cuff kind of way, then, and you saw and looked out your window and everyone else was in agreement, you would do it. That's good to hear. Then at least then you are going to do it. So that's what I was trying to button down, and I'm glad that you've made that clarify that.
Yes, but I must say, I think it's very unlikely. As I say, I won't repeat myself, but I think a heat event that threatens life and limb is much more unlikely than a cold event, which is inevitably and presents a clear and present risk to someone's health. But it could happen, and if it happens, then clearly our officer team, housing team would be assessing that all the time. And if there were a heat event where temperatures reached, I don't know, 90 degrees and 194 degrees, and there was clearly an issue with regard to rough sleepers, we absolutely would intervene and work. They are our clients, and we would work with them.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that is clear.
Well, conditions
Do you have any other question?
Hold on a minute. Sorry, I just wanted to come back on that. Yeah, there are conditions that can be brought on by heat. So hopefully, yes. Okay, we've got some clarification on that. Thank you very much, Councillor Kite.
Do you have another point, Chair?
I think Peter had his hand up.
Yeah, can I mean...
Apologies, Peter, I didn't see you.
Sorry, no problem. It's a bit of an interesting conversation. I mean, SWEP, as I said earlier, is definitely overkill from a housing perspective. You know, if you're running a responsible service that looks after the people that need it the most, then you have a system that operates any day of the year, any kind of weather, whatever the situation may be. You know, particularly we're reminded for a lot of rough sleepers have underlying health issues. So it's absolutely valid to say that heat, moisture could be as much as a hazard to someone's health as cold. So that's fine. SWEP is something that happens. We probably, you'd be surprised if we actually initiate it twice a year. It's not often that you get 3 consecutive nights under below zero. It's unusual. It sounds odd, but having done it all these years, when we first approached sweat, we thought, you know, this is going to be a constant pretty much through, you know, November through to January. But it just doesn't really work like that. If you worked it back on that basis, you really wouldn't deal with many people because sweat wouldn't be activated. But our approach, as I said, is if you approach us as a rough sleeper, you will get the support you need. And if that means it's an overnight emergency placement, why we try to source anything else we may need during working hours. And that's what will happen, councillor. And that's the best assurance really I can give you. You know, our numbers are relatively low, fortunately, but that's equally because we're good at managing them. You know, trench rough sleepers are incredibly difficult to deal with because they often have, by their very nature, very chaotic lifestyle, you know, often some very terrible circumstances that have left them in that place. And they are hard to deal with. But we don't get many that are recurring rough sleepers. Usually once they get into the system, they can be helped. And we're very fortunate that, again, we've got the winter shelter during the winter that can help with that. But we are absolutely committed to taking this once in a lifetime opportunity now to end rough sleeping in Dartford. Because that's what COVID has given us, that opportunity. Because we've now got everybody in, we know where everybody is, we're able to have conversations with them, and it's helping enormously. And I think, you know, looking forward into the next couple of years, I can see our rough sleep problem probably reducing even further because that cohort have been actively dealt with.
Peter, thank you. I mean, it's encouraging to hear that whereas COVID may have been a big problem for many people, we at least have taken advantage of it and we've identified other people. And I think it's good to hear that we actually got a 365 a day facility, whatever the weather, however dry, however wet it is, as we will get from you later on, as requested by Councillor Ossock, all of our councillors will have a knowledge of exactly who to go, whether it be the 24th of December or any other day of the year. Thank you for that, Peter. Chair,
Okay.
do you have anything else to say?
No, I think we should move on to our last point, which is working plan updates. And that's to consider the updated working plan and comment accordingly. Does anybody have any comments on the working plan? No?
Sorry, Chairman, just before we leave the item, can we just have a resolution that we've noted the contents of the report, please?
Yep.
Are the committee happy to know the contents of the report?
I see some
Thank
hands
you.
up.
Has David got his hand up, or is that? David, do you want to speak?
So, Mo, do you want to say something?
Oh.
You were just, yeah, you were acknowledging the note. Thank you.
Acknowledging, yeah. That's it then. So thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you for your comments, and we'll see you at the next scrutiny meeting.
Thank you all. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.